What is going on, everybody? This is the Undefeated by Choice podcast brought to you by Still Fist. We got a fight coming up April 4th, Still Fist Fight Night in Salt Lake City, Utah, Union Event Center. I'm gonna read off some of the names that I'm super excited about on that card. I'm gonna get to some UFC stuff. We got the UFC Fight Night coming up this weekend. Lee versus Oliveira. It's going to be a good card. But before we get into the UFC stuff, let's talk about most important, hometown boy, Salt Lake City, Still Fist, April 4th. Start out, I believe this is the main event, Thomas Harper, Marco Sanchez, which is going to be a good fight. Both pretty well-rounded fighters. Good stand-up on both of them, good ground game on both of them. We haven't seen Marco Sanchez for a while. I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe his last fight was a great back and forth he had with Tracy Hardy. Both of them looked really good in the stand-up. Tracy did catch him in a submission in the second round, I believe, and ended that fight. But up until that point, Marco was looking really good. Thomas Harper, his last fight was a stand-up battle. He's coming off a loss as well. He ended up getting caught. I believe it was in the second round as well. Maybe it was the third round. But both of them coming off a loss, but both of them really well-rounded fighters, and I expect this to be an absolute war. Great fight, and this is a good one. Next one is Wayne Gardner versus LJ Schultz. And if you don't know, there is bad blood, there's rivalry, there is all the dramatics that you want in a fight. And then on top of that, both these guys are skilled. I mean, this isn't just trash talking for trash talking's sake. These are two absolute warriors, great fighters. This is going to be a hell of a fight. I'm super excited for it. But there is a lot of bad blood in this matchup. The camps are rival camps, and there's some bragging rights. I mean, this was a call out. Specifically, Warren called out LJ after his last fight, specifically called him out because of his camp. And it's on, man. It's on. LJ jumped to it and said, let's do this. So, super exciting. Kemp Mafelio versus Josh Brown. That's going to be a heavyweight bout. Kent is getting his pro debut in this. And I don't know much about about Josh Brown, but I do know Kent has heavy, scary, fast hands. So, it's always exciting to see one of his fights because it gets dangerous real quick. Justin McDonald versus Brody Fernelius. Justin McDonald is our current champ at welterweight, amateur welterweight. I believe it's welterweight. And he's been on a roll. He's not secretive about what his game is. He's going to get you to the ground. He's going to ground and pound you. He's going to beat you up. He's going to wrestle you. He's going to take you down. Brody, on the other hand, loves to stand and bang. He's newer, but he's been so impressive in his past. I believe his only 2 fights in. He came in looking super impressive, super clean striking, heavy hands. Real heavy for his weight division, scary heavy for his weight division. So this is a good fight. I mean, this is one of those classic striker versus grappler. And I know as soon as I say that, Justin's gonna be like, "Oh, I'm a striker too," and I love Justin. I'm not. That's not a disrespectful thing for anybody to say striker versus wrestler. It's just it's what we see. It is what it is, man. I love you, Justin, and I'm super excited to see this fight. I think they're both great fighters. I think a lot of both of them. I really do think this is maybe fight of the night candidate. We'll see. And the last of the fights that I'm going to talk about, Yuli Pupunu versus Cole Faust. Cole Faust is one of those young up-and-comers. He's got a lot of steam behind him. He's got a lot of heat behind him. A lot of people are super excited for him and to see where he goes and what he does with his MMA career. He's just born and bred for this. He's been wrestling since he's a little kid. He's been training MMA since he's a little kid. He came in, I think, right after he graduated from high school, 18 years old, came in fearless, like he'd been in there a million times, came in his debut, got a win, comes in, follows that up with another win, and just shows that he's real well-rounded. So he's one of those kids you want to keep an eye on, but also his His team behind him, specifically his dad, really is, trying to keep him humble. Obviously he's proud of him and he wants to, go out and promote for his son and get his son's name out there. But he also wants to pick smart fights. He also wants to do it right. He doesn't want to throw him he doesn't want to throw him out there and build him up and put too much. I don't know exactly, because it's not like he's putting too much spotlight. He doesn't want to put too much spotlight on him. He believes in his son, but he doesn't want to let it get ahead of him. That's the best way to put it. He doesn't want to let it get ahead of him. He wants his son to go through the right process. You go through the amateur scene. You win in the amateur scene. You build up that time in the cage. You get more comfortable, and you find your weaknesses in the amateur circuit, because everyone has them. You find your weaknesses in the amateur circuit. By the time you get to pro, then you've got all those kinks out. You've worked on them. You know where your weaknesses are. You know where your strengths are, and you play to those. So he wants to do it right. So super excited. April 4th, going to be a bomb card. I mean, there's a bunch of other names on the list. I'll get to all of them eventually, but those are just like some of the ones that stand out to me as ones that I'm super excited about. So, now I know everyone wants to get excited about Khabib versus Tony, and how could you not? I mean, this is a matchmaker's dream fight. I mean, this is the one we've been looking for. We've been waiting for this for so long, and the MMA gods have punished us for some reason and not allowed this to happen, as it has come in and stopped it from happening many times before. But now we believe this is the time, and the moons and planets have aligned, and we are here at the basin of Mount Tony and Mount Khabib, and we're ready to watch this fight. But do not sleep on this weekend's card, Lee versus Oliveira. This is going to be a great card. I know we want to get ahead of ourselves and we want to look to the next super fight or the big fight, and we forget the what we think would be a lesser fight. Man, this card is stacked. This card has a lot of good matchups that are going to that have implications for down the road for title matchups and things like that. So I just want to go over some of those fights that I'm super excited about, that I want to see. And it's free. I mean, this is probably one of the best free cards we've got. Normally with the free cards, you know what you're getting. It's people, they just want to get ring time or whatever, and they try to give you a decent main event, but they don't really put too much money into it. I think they slipped up on this one. I think this card is going to be one that should have been a pay-per-view card, because it's going to be so good. I really do. I'm excited for it. So I'm going to go over some of those matchups. First of all, we're going to go main event. Kevin Lee versus Charles Oliveira. Kevin Lee 3-2 his last 5 fights. And his only losses in those 2 losses were to Dos Anjos and Tony Ferguson. So, I mean, dude, the best of the best, man. He's up there with the best of the best. He's ranked number 8. It's not too many to win. He's not too many wins away from putting himself into top 5, top 3. And he's one of those fighters that everybody across the board is saying he will hold a belt one day. He's young, he's athletic, he's willing to learn, he's hungry. There's a lot of implications that he would be the next George St. Pierre. Like, they just saw that same kind of skill level in him. So, this is a very important fight for him to see if he's on that trajectory. Charles Oliveira is 5-0 in his last 5 fights. And all of these, I've gone to the last 5 fights. I'm not going to go over all their records. I'm just going to see what they looked like in the last 5 fights. I think that's a good gauge of where they're at now versus, them going 10-0 in their first whatever and then losing the next 4 fights. It's, that doesn't speak very well for where they're headed. But he's actually 6-0. He's on a 6-fight win streak. He's more than 6-0, but he's on a 6-fight win streak, but 5-0 in the last 5. But the biggest name, the only big name that he's fought is Jim Miller, and Jim Miller is a 50-50 fighter. So, this is probably the biggest name Charles Oliveira's fought. He's ranked number 13. This is probably the biggest name that he's fought, and with a win, it could launch him into top 10 status. I mean, he's beating a number 8. If he wins, it should launch him into top 10 and put him on a 7-fight win streak, which is pretty impressive in that weight division. So, I mean, this, I think, has a lot of implications for the division if either guy wins. I mean, Charles Oliveira is looked at as an absolute killer right now with the win streak. And Kevin Lee, he's number 8, but he's pretty much on the bubble. Those 6, 7, and 8 guys, they're all could be in the top 5 and are almost in the top 5. So I mean, he's right on the cusp of being a top 5 guy. A win here may make him skip the line and get up to 5. We'll see about that. I mean, the ranking game is kind of a joke anyway. So, but if you think that's important, that's something you could be seeing. But it's gonna for both of them, it's a really good fight to launch both of their careers. Lee's last fight, he was going up against another undefeated fighter who people were saying this is a bad matchup for him, Gillespie. They were saying that was a bad matchup for him. This guy's undefeated and he's a beast, and Lee has kind of been all over the place. We didn't really know where he was going, and so he was the underdog. I mean, they were not excited about it. Like a lot of the analysts and people, in the business were saying this is not a good matchup for him, and he went in and starched him. Landed a nasty head kick, put him to sleep, and fight was over. I mean, Kevin Lee looked good. He looked clean, crisp, exactly what we expected him to be, what he was, promised to be. So, that was a huge win for him. So now he's taking on the next biggest test in Charles Oliveira. And we all know Kevin Lee's story, and he came in, like I said, and everyone was like, this is the next GSP. And his coach passed away, and he didn't really feel like he wanted to replace his coach. He didn't feel like he needed a full team behind him, and he was going to continue with the people that he was with and continue doing what he's doing without a real head coach. And he was just going in, and his athleticism and his skill level was doing pretty good for him, but it wasn't. It just wasn't getting the job done, and he really wasn't performing to the level that we all thought he was capable of. And then, he goes and ends up leaving. He ends up going to TriStar to train there, and TriStar is the gym that GSP trains at. And so, he's training under Faraz Sabi, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Faraz is the closest I can get. He went there, and now that's where he's at. So it's like everyone expected him to be the next GSP, and he's like, okay, well, how about I go to the guy who trained GSP? How about I go to him? And so now he had that camp under his belt for the Gillespie fight, and so all arrows are pointing to success and eventual title fight down the road for Kevin Lee if he can get past this monster in Charles Oliveira. So, I mean, that's a matchup, man. That's a matchup you don't want to miss. That's a fight you don't want to miss. So, tune in. It's free on ESPN, man. Why would you not do that? Why would you be dumb and just sit at your house and not watch the fights and just think about the Tony Khabib fight? Watch this fight. Another good fight, another one I'm super excited for is Gilbert Burns versus Damian Maia. We all know Damian Maia is an absolute killer on the ground, but Gilbert Burns is no slouch on the ground either. They're both high-level grapplers. This is going to be a very high-level back and forth on the ground matchup. Or they both know that, and it's going to be a banger. They're just going to stand there in the middle and throw hands. That's the beauty of when you get two grapplers together, because you're either going to get high-level grappling, which is fun to watch, or both of them say, screw it, we don't want to get caught because I know this guy's good on the ground too, and they just stand and bang. So either way, it's going to be good. Gilbert Burns, he's 4-1 in his last 5 fights, and his only loss was to Dan Hooker. Now, this was a while ago. This was a few years ago, and so it wasn't the Dan Hooker that we all know now, but Dan Hooker is a beast always. I mean, he's always been a threat. He wasn't as put together as he is now, but still, if that's your only loss, that's saying a lot, man. He's got a good resume underneath him. But then you go again to Damian Maia, who's 3-2 in his last 5. Fought the best of the best across the world, and his only 2 losses in those last 5 fights were to Colby Covington and Kamaru Usman. So I mean, the highest of the highest level in that weight division, the 2 toughest guys, the 2 baddest men. No questions, 1 and 2 in the division are his only losses. Everyone else he's beat in whatever in the past 5. So it's like, we know Damian Maia is no slouch. We know that he is no one to sleep on, and it's going to be a good fight. So that's one that you don't want to miss. You don't want to miss. You got Johnny Walker coming back to the ring. The octagon. Everyone's excited to see him. I was never high on the Johnny Walker train. I mean, he was exciting to watch, but I just felt he was not proven yet. I just felt like he hadn't been tested, and we hadn't seen. You have these fighters that are dynamic and they do all these cool things and they look really impressive, but then if you haven't seen him in deep waters and you haven't seen him struggle, if you haven't seen him in adversity, then you wonder what they're really made of. You wonder what they really, if they really have what it takes to be the champ. And Johnny, they were saying, oh, he's a contender for John Jones. I mean, if he, and matter of fact, he was coming off an injury and he was going into his next fight with Corey Anderson, and they said, well, it was basically if he wins this fight, his next opponent should be John Jones. So they have been wanting to just throw this guy to the wolves from day one, just because that division is just not. We know what's up with that division. The 205 division is struggling because you have such a dominant champ, and then everyone else just kind of falls underneath. But I think Dominic Reyes showed that John is more human than ever, and then. Now he's got to fight with Corey Anderson because Corey Anderson went in and absolutely smoked Johnny Walker in a couple seconds. So now you get to see Johnny Walker coming back and seeing if he can come back from adversity, if he can come back from a loss. And this is a good test. It's a good test for him to see. He's fighting Nikita Krylov, and he's a well-rounded fighter. He's got submissions and TKOs on his record. He's barely slightly more better on the ground, I'd say. He's got like a 58% submission record. So I have to apologize. I keep if you can hear me sniffing into the microphone, I have to apologize because I got a little bit of that coronavirus going on inside of me right now, and it is giving me a little sexy voice, but it's kind of ruining my ability to breathe. So I apologize if you can hear me sniffing. Please just put up with it. I'm almost done. But yeah, he's a really well-rounded fighter. And the good thing for Johnny's defense is, or a good thing in Johnny's defense is, he's got 100% takedown defense. No one's taking him down. I mean, against Corey Anderson, if the fight had gone longer, I'm pretty sure Corey would have been able to take him to the ground because Corey's phenomenal. But we'll see if Nikita will be able to do it. I think that's where he's going to want to get it because you don't want to stand and trade with Johnny. He's so dynamic, so explosive. It's not something you really want. You don't really want to if you don't have to. And where he is a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little more advanced on the ground, he's probably going to want to take the fight there. So we'll see if the takedown defense is good. But in the striking, where Nikita has some good striking behind him, we'll see if Johnny can defend it. They're actually percentage wise, Nikita's actually defensive. His striking defense is actually better than Johnny's. He's at 44%, where Johnny's only at 29%. So Johnny is willing to take damage to give damage, where Nikita does try to slip some more punches, does try to have more defense, where Johnny is just more like, I'm going to get my shots off. If you get some off on me, good luck to you, but I'm going to put you to sleep before you can get off too much on me. So that's a That's a good fight. That's an exciting fight. Again, Johnny coming off a loss from Corey Anderson, and Nikita's coming off a loss to Glover Teixeira. So both of them are coming off to highly ranked and skilled guys. They're coming off losses to them. Nothing to pout about. They've lost to some legit dudes. Jussier Formiga versus Brandon Moreno. Again, Jussier is a decision machine. He's 95% of his fights go to decision. All of his wins. 95% of his wins are due to decision. That's crazy. Like, this dude just has war after war after war after war. And Brandon is no joke. He's got 15 wins, and 10 of his wins are by submission. So it's obvious where he wants to get this fight. He wants to get the fight to the ground and finish it. And I think it favors him because Jussier, his game plan is that is going to take you to a decision, which means he's got to fend off submissions all night long until the fight's over. He's got to defend submissions until the fight's over, and hope that he gets a decision. So I think the odds as far as like how the fight ends, it favors Brendan. But I mean, Jussier is the toughest opponent Brendan's ever fought. He's 2-1 in his last 5 fights, and Jussier is his biggest name to date. And Jussier, this is interesting on him. This shows he's pretty freaking talented, and that this division isn't a division to close up shop on yet. It's not one to close the doors on yet. His loss was to Joseph Benavidez, but one of his most recent wins was against Davison Figueiredo, who just beat Joseph Benavidez. So these three kind of are in a love triangle to see who's the next one to step up and get in there. And with a win here, he's got a good argument. He's got a good argument to fight Jussier next. I think they're going to have, or to fight Davison next. I think they're going to have him and Joseph Benavidez rematch because everybody wants Joseph Benavidez to have a belt, so we're just going to do everything we can to get him a belt. And I know that makes me sound like a hater, but I love Joseph Benavidez as much as the next guy, and I wanted to see him win. I wanted to see him become a champion. I have nothing but respect for him. He's been in it for a million years, over a decade. I believe it's 14 years, but over a decade. And I have nothing but respect for him, and the way he handles himself, the way he conducts himself, I got nothing but respect for him. But Jesus Christ, he lost, man. He did not have a good game plan. The head clash was on them. I'll say it was on them. I mean, he was leaping in, and Davison did put his head forward. So, I mean, they did clash heads. They both got cracked. He steps back. Davison cracks him with a shot and puts him to sleep. That wasn't a big, egregious, cheap shot or whatever. Joseph was. I didn't feel like Joseph was winning the fight up until that point anyways. I felt like his game plan was not great. And it's the same game plan that he always has. He uses explosive. He uses his speed to go in and hit you with a flurry of punches. But Davison's defense was better. Davison was winning that fight fair and square. The head clash was unfortunate, but I don't think that Joseph Benavidez would have won that fight had it gone the distance or had it gone any further without the headbutt. So the only issue is the missing of weight. But how often do you see that? A fighter misses weight and wins, and then they get an automatic rematch. That's not a typical thing that we see. And I mean, I'm sure I'll have a billion people come and tell me where that's happened in the history of fighting, and that's happened in the history of UFC. But I know it's not a common practice. Because there was that huge, there was all these records coming out last year, because it seemed like last year everyone was missing weight. Either 2018 or 2019, everyone was missing weight. And all these stats kept coming out about how people who are missing weight usually have a higher percentage of winning. And And so people are like, well, why don't you everyone just miss weight, and then you just go get the win, and you can get a title shot anyways, because you tried to make weight. That's your division. So like there's a big controversy about that. So I know it wasn't a common practice I know it's not a common practice to just give a rematch just because there's missing weight. So they talk like there's this big old drama in that fight, but there really wasn't. It wasn't that crazy. It was just, yeah, he missed weight. That's unprofessional and that sucks. And I hope we don't have to deal with that again. But it wasn't like it was this egregious, cheating and whatever narrative we were trying to paint to get them the rematch. I just don't think that's the match to make. I mean, if GCA wins this fight, then I think he is in the running and he is the next in line for that fight. And so that's my opinion on it. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. I I wasn't even going to bring that up, and then I just got pissed for some reason. Last fight that I'm excited about is Amanda Revis versus Ronda Marcos. And this is just this is a stacked division, and this is probably the most stacked female division. So any good attention and spotlight we can put on this division, I'm all for. Amanda, she's only had 2 fights in the UFC, and her only loss was to Mackenzie Dern, who came in this division. Everyone expected her to come in and do really well. Everyone expected her to come in and just dominate. She's had some issues with making weight, but it's still she's a real threat in the division, and so Amanda's losing to her is not that big of a deal. Amanda's a well-rounded fighter. Both in striking and submissions. She's at 43% split. She's at 43% in both strikes and submission wins. So she can take the fight anywhere. She can go anywhere. It doesn't need to just she doesn't need to keep it standing. If they go to the ground, she's proficient on the ground. She can get it done on the ground. She's fighting. They're both ranked 15, so they gotta settle this beef because they're both got the same ranking. So only one of them can hold the ranking. So she's fighting Ronda Marcos, and Ronda Marcos, she goes to decision. That's where a lot of her wins come from, her going to decision. She's at 56% wins via decision, but she's lost to the best of the best in the division. She's lost to Angela Hill. She's lost to Claudia Gadelha. She's lost to Ansaroff, Nina Ansaroff. By the way, congratulations, Nina, on being pregnant. I wish you and Amanda the best. But yeah, Ronda's lost to the best of the best, and she's lost in decision to most of them. So it's like she knows how to go the distance. She's been there with tough. She's battle ready. This is gonna be a good one. This is a good one for the division. Again, it's putting more spotlight on that division. We just saw the 2 headliners of that division, the 2 best of the best when it comes to that division, Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, which is still, a few days later, I'm still saying it's the best fight I've ever seen. We'll see if I continue down that path, but right now, still up there. Best fight I've ever seen, hands down. Male, female, don't matter. That's weird that we're even making the difference between them because they're all fighters. So that's not me being a social justice warrior. That's me just saying, why are we doing that? That doesn't make sense. Fight's a fight. So yeah, I think that's. Those are just a few of the fights on the card. The rest of them are a lot of newer up and comers. There's still, there's plenty more on the fight card, but just those ones alone are going to be exciting. I think those are ones I am excited to watch personally and see how they unfold and see where the division implications that they have. So this card is not one to be slept on. Like, man, don't miss out because you're so excited for what's down the road. Pay attention to what's in front of you. This is a damn good card right in front of you. And then, so, before I get off, I had a few other things I want to talk about. I have 2 questions, kind of fun questions I want to ask the listeners and see and hear your comments on them and see how you guys feel about them. Because, whatever, just fun to do and hear what people have to say. And I want to get people more involved, more invested into this podcast. But before I get into that, I was listening to Below the Belt with Brendan Schaub today, and he was going off on Dan Miragliotta for talking to Yoel Romero and Israel Adesanya during their fight, and he was saying, like, come on, guys, you got to give him something to score. You got to fight. Like, he was trying to press the action, get the action going, and Brendan was just going off. Was like, that was not your job. You're not a fan. You were there to be a ref. You're not there to say that. Keep your mouth shut. I mean, he was laying into him about this. And typically, I agree with a lot of stuff that Brendan says. I mean, I'm not like a nut swinging Brendan Schaub fan. I like him a lot, but I do disagree with him a lot. I do disagree with some of the stuff he says. And this one I definitely disagree with. And this is the only reason why I disagree with it. The ref's job is to ref the fight. It's there to, make sure there's no illegal shots going, that people aren't holding onto the fence. That, he's there to keep order. But he's also there to keep the action going. He is there to keep the action going. How many times have we seen no action on the ground, someone stalling on the ground, and the fighter and the ref stand them up and put them in a standing position? How many times have we seen someone pressed up against the fence, not doing anything, and the ref separating them and put them in the standing position? His job is to press the action. If they're stalling, it's his job to stop that. So what do you do if they're stalling from the striking position? And that's what was going on in that fight. They were both stalling, waiting for the other person to attack so that they could, counter. All he was doing was trying to keep the action going because that's also his job. So for you to say, like, that's not your job, it is. How else is he supposed to get the action going? Because he can't stand them up. They're already standing up. He can't separate them and put them to the center of the octagon because they're already there. The only thing he has is his words to say, let's fight. Come on, you guys got to fight. His job is to keep the action going. Hands down. We know it. Every time we see it, we get bored as fans of people not, doing anything on the ground. We start chanting, stand them up, stand them up, stand up. Same thing on the cage. And I know there's a lot of MMA diehards that think a ref should never stand them up. And I've heard Joe Rogan say it. So of course everybody jumps on board. And again, I respect 99% of things that come out of his mouth. But on this, I don't think that that's the right thing. I think if you're stalling, because in that case, you're going to have all these Olympic wrestlers jumping to MMA, becoming champions, because they can take someone down, lay on top of them, and stall. You would have only wrestlers as your champions. Of course, that's an exaggeration, but you would see a lot of that. You would. There's no doubt about it. So the ref stands them up and lets them, keeps the action going. That's all I'm going to say. Brandon, I think you got that one wrong. It's not a big deal. But to get mad at him over that, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that Dan was wrong in what he did, or even saying that. And then there was another complaint he had, and he was saying, like, Izzy's corner should have Romero's corner should have said, like, okay, the plan's not working, throw it away in the 5th round. Like, plan's not working, throw it away, go and get him. Like, finish the round, do what you got to do, knock him out. And I do agree with that might have been what they should have done. But I also, what if that was their game plan? What if they thought Izzy's pride would not have allowed him to have a boring fight? So in the 5th round, Izzy would have said, screw it, I don't care if I lose, I'm not going to put on a boring fight for the fans. I'm going to come out and finish him because that's what I've been saying I'm going to do. Which would have played into the game plan that Romero was trying to implement for the first 4 rounds. So I could see them saying, like, this isn't working, but I could also see them saying this is the round that he's going to attack because he's not going to let the fight in it finish being boring. So it's like, what exactly was their game plan? Because that might have been part of their game plan to say his pride is not going to allow him to take this into the 5th round and have it be this boring. He's going to come out and he's going to attack you because that's his pride ain't going to let him have a boring fight. So I'm going to lay off the brake. I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on that one, but that argument is way more justifiable than the Dan Miragliotta one. I think Dan was in the right to try to keep the action going. They were both stalling on their feet. So if they both stall on their feet, the only thing the ref has is his word. So that's my thoughts on that. And then, crazy news, the freaking Brian Ortega slapping Jay Park for this is a story. Jay Park is a friend of Korean Zombie. He runs the management company that manages Korean Zombie. So he was doing an interview and he was translating for Korean Zombie, and they called out Brian Ortega. They wanted that fight, and so he was doing the translating for him, and so Brian Ortega took that personally and went and slapped the translator instead of the guy that's trying to get the fight with him. And he said it's because he believes that Jay Park was running his social media page and talking trash on him. And from all accounts I've ever heard, is Brian Ortega is the nicest guy in the world. That's totally out of character, and that he's super respectful, and he's actually like a shy guy when you meet him in person. That's totally not his character. I wouldn't be surprised if the real reason was he had too many drinks. I mean, you go to the fights, you're sitting cage side, you're hanging out with your buddies. I mean, maybe too many Modelos. I don't know. I don't know if that is the reason or what, but I think I wouldn't be surprised to find out if there's a little bit of liquid courage and he was just pissed looking over at him, seeing Jay Park real close, knowing that this guy talked crap on him, then he went and decided to handle business. I don't think that's really his character, but I mean, now it sells the fight. Now the fight's going to happen. So, I mean, everyone got what they wanted, right? But I'm just curious what your thoughts are about Brian Ortega slapping Jay Park. Is that acceptable? Is that cool? Is that ridiculous? Should there be big repercussions for attacking someone who's not even a fighter when you are a fighter? What's your thoughts on that? And then so this is one that I think it's funny to watch how this one unfolded, because forever Tyron Woodley was like, Dana White hates me, the UFC hates me, and they was like, we don't hate you, you're crazy, you're being weird, we like you. But I thought it was very interesting that Dana White was defending Izzy and blaming it all on Romero. Was like, Israel was not the reason for that boring fight. He did all that he could. Romero wasn't willing to engage, blah, 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 blah. In contrast to him crucifying Tyron Woodley for the Wonderboy fight, saying it was terrible and it was, that it was embarrassing and that the fight was so boring and, just complete attack on Tyron Woodley. But yet praises Israel Adesanya. Tell me what you think about that. Tell me what your thoughts are on that. I think it's pretty clear that Tyron was right the whole time, but that's just my opinion. Everybody, you can follow us on Facebook at Still Fist Fight Night. You can follow us on Instagram at Still Fist Fight. You can find this podcast on YouTube, and you can find my interviews with other fighters on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and YouTube here at this channel at Undefeated by Choice. Be good to yourself. Be good to each other. I love you.